The clock struck midnight on January the 1st, 1970, marking the start of a new decade at the Cowichan District Hospital in Duncan, British Columbia. For practical nurse Doreen Kendall, it began as another routine 8-hour night shift in the extended care ward for elderly patients. Working alongside registered nurse Frida Wilson, she moved through the dimly lit corridors, tending to patients who often found sleep difficult during the long, lonely hours. Both nurses, in late middle age, required exceptional tact, maturity, and gentle manner in their positions, qualities essential when caring for elderly patients contemplating what little remained of their lives. At approximately 5 a.m, Doreen noticed one of her female patients had become restless. Concerned the woman might be too warm, she approached the window near the patient's bed to let in some fresh air. As she parted the heavy drapes, a brilliant light suddenly hit her eyes. It was still dark outside, Doreen would later recount. But about 60 feet away, right above the children's ward, there was this object so big and bright I could see everything clearly. The children's ward occupied the 3rd floor of a wing jutting out at right angles to Doreen's left. From a 2nd floor position, the object hovered just over 1 story above her. What Doreen witnessed defied explanation. The circular object had distinct top and bottom sections. The lower portion was silvery, like polished steel, shaped like an inverted bowl with a string of bright lights around its circumference, like a glowing necklace. The upper section was a transparent dome, brilliantly lit from within. Inside the illuminated dome, she clearly saw 2 male-like figures, one behind the other, facing away from the hospital. The front figure appeared taller, possibly positioned higher. Both wore close-fitting dark suits that covered their heads, though their hands remained bare and distinctly human. "I never felt so peaceful in all my life," Doreen said. "I wish I could have talked to them. They looked like fine, tall, well-built men. They were dressed in tight-fitting suits of the same material that covered their heads, but their hands were bare, and I noticed how human they looked. Their flesh seemed just like ours." As she watched, the craft tilted forward, revealing more interior details. She could see the figures below their knees, standing before what appeared to be stools. Her attention focused on a massive instrument panel facing the front figure. Coming from a family of racing car enthusiasts, Doreen found herself fascinated by the control panel of chrome-like metal with various instruments inset into its surface, reaching nearly to the dome's top. The man in front was staring at the panel as if something very important was going on, and wondered if they might have mechanical trouble, she said. "I even thought they might have landed on the roof of the hospital and then had trouble taking off." For several moments, Doreen stood transfixed, momentarily forgetting Frida's presence. "I felt I mustn't make a noise or do anything that would break the trend of what was happening," she explained. Then, as if sensing her thoughts, the rear figure slowly turned towards her. He seemed to look right at me, but I couldn't see his face. It was covered by a darkish material that looked softer than the rest of the suit. I'm sure he saw me because then he touched the other man on the back. What followed made the sharpest impression on Doreen. When the man in black did this, the one in front reached down and took hold of something like a lever beside him. I'll never forget how deliberately he did it. He pushed it back and forth, and the saucer, or whatever you'd call it, started to circle slowly, still close to the building, in an anti-clockwise direction. This movement broke Doreen's spell. She beckoned Frida to the window. "I noticed Miss Kendall standing at the window and wondered what she was looking at," Frida recounted. "Then I saw this great big light over the patio outside the children's ward. I'd say it was quite a bit larger than a car. It looked circular in shape and was moving around slowly before it started to move away. It was all just tremendously bright. Some people say we were looking at a plastic bag with candles in it, put there as a joke. but it would take 1,000,000 candles to make it as bright as that. Based on both witnesses' estimates, the object spanned 5 windows of the children's ward, a diameter of at least 50 feet. Frida didn't see the interior details or occupants Doreen described. When asked about this discrepancy, Doreen suggested Frida arrived too late after the craft began moving, and its increased brightness obscured interior visibility. Unlike Doreen's peaceful experience, Frida felt alarm and fear, plus a tingling sensation. Yet, paradoxically, Doreen experienced longer-lasting effects. After circling 4 or 5 times, the object moved away along the children's ward roof. Both nurses called to colleague Pat Claxon and Greta Appleby, who rushed to another window but saw only a bright light receding. 2 more nurses looked out seconds later but saw nothing. The object had moved behind bordering trees. Doreen documented her experience in the hospital's official schedule. At 5 a.m, I saw a flying saucer as low as the 3rd floor of the hospital when I pulled the curtains. There were 2 men or figures in the dome flying towards Victoria. The bottom of the saucer was brilliantly lit, and also the dome. New Year's morning. When Doreen returned home to Nanaimo, her visiting brother immediately noticed something unusual about her. For at least a week after that, I didn't feel quite like my usual self, Doreen said. I felt very subdued, and other nurses said I seemed preoccupied. Unknown to hospital staff, their sighting wasn't isolated. Before any publicity, a truck driver and his wife reported their own encounter to authorities. Returning from a New Year's party at around 5 a.m, they observed a huge white light, as big as a house, hovering over their property. The husband described it as oval or rectangular, with 3 or 4 light shafts extending down, converging into one. The object suddenly shot up and vanished at incredible speed. I may have had a few drinks, he said, but I know perfectly well that had nothing to do with what I saw, and my wife saw it too. That evening at around 7 p.m, yet more witnesses reported a glowing object at low altitude. At Deer Lodge restaurant south of Mill Bay, Arthur and Edith Gillam, with friends, spotted a large light moving slowly over Saanich Peninsula, 10 miles east. It must have been very bright for us to see it from that distance, Arthur observed. Judge George Hallett, his wife, and 3 guests also witnessed a huge orange light passing along Mill Bay waterfront. This was no ordinary aircraft, and it was no plastic bag trick either, Judge Hallett stated. It made no sound, moved very slowly, and was enormous. We watched it for over 5 minutes until it seemed to disappear into the clouds. The most dramatic sighting came from the Drummond family. Jim Drummond, the shipwright and ship's pilot, and wife Diana, lived aboard a converted tugboat. Visiting Jim's mother, Bea, at a shore overlooking house, she first spotted the light while calling them for dinner. I couldn't tell how big it was. It was so bright, with a yellow-orangey glow like sunlight, she recalled. Jim grabbed his telescope, studying the object under 900-foot overcast. It was egg-shaped, vertical, with an indistinct top and bottom. The top seemed transparent, and inside I thought I could see a set of lights. When Bea switched on a porch floodlight, the craft dropped 300 feet between house and boat, almost stopping. Something came out of that thing, Jim recounted, a light ray like a thin neon tube, in pieces like Morse code, dots and dashes. It curved down, then flashed out simultaneously. My hair stood on end. The object climbed back and continued south. Southwest winds would have driven any balloon opposite to the observed path. These sightings weren't new. December 1969 had brought scattered reports north of Duncan. One morning at Alexander Elementary School, teacher Edith Beeling, 2 aides, the secretary, and 2 students observed a ring-shaped object. The ring looked like solid substance, Edith reported, like a large heavy hula hoop of thick rolled up plastic. We rushed outside to get a better look. I felt like ringing the school bell, but decided I'd better not. Reports continued for weeks. Mayor James Quaife and neighbours witnessed a bright light performing spectacular manoeuvres with dead stops and direction reversals. John Vanderhoek reported motorists stopping to watch a red object rising and falling with changing intensity. None of the witnesses saw publicity. The story only emerged when a nurse friend contacted investigators, leading to press coverage. Witnesses then received calls from legitimate investigators and others claiming inside information about supposed hoaxes, blaming schoolchildren or drunks, though none explained how such activities occurred on hospital grounds without police intervention. The credibility of the witnesses, nurses, a judge, a ship's pilot, teachers, combined with their unwavering accounts under intense questioning, presents a compelling case. Each remained firm in their reports, never changing or embellishing despite repeated interviews. Jim Drummond later recognised an obvious prank in Maple Bay. The second one wasn't the same thing at all. You could see it was a kid's job, not a fraction as bright, just bobbing around without really going anywhere. The witnesses knew the difference between earthly pranks and something genuinely extraordinary. What hovered over Cowichan District Hospital and surrounding Vancouver Island in early 1970? Was Doreen's peaceful encounter with two humanoid figures a glimpse of otherworldly visitors? The multiple witness accounts, professional standing of observers, and detailed descriptions continue making this one of Canada's most intriguing or documented UFO cases. What they witnessed in those first days of 1970 remains for them and many researchers genuinely extraordinary.